So it's lesson 4, part 2. I don't think we need to spend any more time on input validation. It's not that complex, really. We use HTML attributes in our forms, as well as some logic checking with if statements in our application code. We display friendly error messages, and then we use a flag to determine whether or not we want to save data to our database. So the other thing we want to talk about today is version control and Git. Now I'm not sure, I know I asked before, but I can't remember. Have you guys used Git much? Did you use it in any of your other classes? Are you already set up with Git and GitHub, or is it new? You've used it the past few weeks. Okay, you're using it probably with Jarrett. Okay, all right, so we can skip over most. I'll just do a quick review, and I'm going to point you to some resources that I've posted. So everybody should have, and JavaScript, okay, good. Everyone should have a GitHub account. You should have Git installed on your machines. So I'm going to go through just a couple quick things about Git, point you to a few resources, and then we're going to publish our PHP Tunes site up to GitHub, and then you're free to go. So my morning class GitHub was new for a lot of them. So I've posted this slide deck on D2L, but we can skip over most of it. So Git is about version control. It is an essential tool. Okay, employers told us years ago, we're training you guys well, but how are we letting people graduate and not know anything about version control? It's standard. No matter where you work, they're going to expect you to know it. Okay, so GitHub, which is now owned by Microsoft, the most popular version control repository in the world. There are some other big ones like Bitbucket and GitLab as well, not the only ones. I will show you what the commit history looks like in some real project, which I don't know if this is something you've seen before. So what does this look like, for example? So here's a student project using Node.js. So this was a team of 5 students. So they worked on it over a semester, and between them, they had 131 commits. And if I click on that, it shows me the history of all of the changes, who made them, and then I can go to any particular version, and it's actually going to show me what was changed from one version to another. So we can compare, we can merge, we can roll back. So anytime you are working on a project, you should be committing changes to GitHub. Maybe not every time you save, but at least when you're done working for the day. That way there's also no excuse if you ever have computer problems that you don't have access to your files, because they should be backed up to GitHub in the cloud. Just to show you another example of here's an old site I did a few years ago for a real estate company. It's not in use anymore. But I worked on this site over a couple of months. So I started in September, and I make a description in my commit message of what I was working on. So this day, when I finished the events, I committed to GitHub, then I added all my authentication, hid the social authentication. So the commit messages are important because they describe what work you did in each version. So in your assignments, I want to see descriptive commit messages for full marks, not just commit 1, commit 2, commit 3. Because if you have to go back to an earlier version, those commit messages don't help you. The other reason that Git and version control are really important, and you probably won't have talked about this in your Java class, is its importance in the DevOps process. Anybody heard of the term DevOps before? You know what it means? We're not really going to work with it in this course, but we are in September. Mike, you worked a little bit at CIBC. You've heard of it. Okay, 20, that's right. So CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous deployment. This is the way that most modern applications, especially web applications, are now tested, updated, maintained, and deployed. It's this continuous cycle. We code, we build, we test, and we release into this deployment cycle, and then we plan the next version. Now, right now, our AWS server, it doesn't support continuous integration, continuous deployment, but we are going to use it in September, and you'll also probably use it in your JavaScript frameworks course. So right now, when I make changes to our PHP application, right, if I want those applications to be live on the internet, I have to connect with FileZilla and upload them. The CI/CD process or pipeline lets me integrate my web host in with my version control system. So it looks something like this. So here's an application we built. So Heroku is a cloud service owned by Salesforce. So this was a JavaScript application built with Node.js and Angular. And notice it's tied. I've linked this website to a particular Git repository. And the way continuous integration, continuous deployment works is every time I make a new commit and push to GitHub, every 60 seconds, the web server is looking for changes in my repository and it syncs and grabs the new version. So I no longer have to use FileZilla to deploy my website. I push my code to GitHub to back it up, and then it automatically syncs my new version. If I go to my activity, I can see all of the deployments. They're all time-stamped, and each one has a rollback. So if I push changes and it breaks the site, I can immediately just go and click on an old version and redeploy the old version. So this is part of this DevOps CI/CD process, and we'll do this in future semesters. Fortunately, our AWS server, it doesn't support deployment from GitHub. But being comfortable with how GitHub works, it's going to support this CI/CD process we're going to work with later. And this is kind of the modern way to deploy web applications. And many companies don't even use FTP like FileZilla anymore. It's important you learn it because some places use it, but this is the modern web. So let's walk through the process of putting our PHP tunes application up on GitHub, and then how also we want to create a Readme file which serves as documentation. So in your browser, if you can go to GitHub, first we're going to create a new repository. So you just click on the plus and new repository. Just call it PHP tunes. You can put in an optional description if you want. Something like, I don't know, Comp1006G in PHP SQL site. Make sure you choose private because your application contains your AWS database credentials, so your code should not be public. You want it to be private. You should leave all of these unchecked. Yes, we want a README file, but we're not going to create it when we initialize the repository. This is important. Do not check these boxes or you're going to get a merge conflict. Make sure they are all unchecked. So just give it a name, choose private, and click Create Repository. We're then going to jump over to our code editor and run the Git commands we need to initialize Git in our PHP tunes folder, to connect it up to our remote repository, and then commit and push the files. So we'll sync what we have locally up to GitHub. So just go ahead and make your new repository. And then there are a whole number of ways you can upload to Git. There's some built-in tools directly in Visual Studio Code or PHP Storm. I think the best way is simply to use your terminal, your integrated terminal in your IDE. So in Visual Studio Code, you just click on View Terminal. If you're in PHP Storm, there's a terminal button down here. If you click, toggles it. So first I'm going to initialize, actually I'm going to open up my folder. I'm going to open my PHP Tunes folder here on my computer, which is in XAMPP, htdocs, here's PHP Tunes. Now you'll notice I've already got a little .git folder here because I've already initialized Git. If you haven't initialized Git in this folder, you won't see this. It's also a hidden folder. So if I click on the View menu and check off Hidden Items, then you'll see it. But if you don't have it to initialize it, the first command you're going to run is git init. I'm not going to run this command because I've already initialized it. I will put it in the chat as well. So you're going to run git init. You only have to do that once. Now Git is going to watch my PHP Tunes folder for changes. New files, deleted files, modified files. So run git space init and hit enter. And you should get a message saying that Git has initialized a repository in this folder. That's interesting, Julio. Cannot open local terminal. Okay, if you can't do it through the integrated terminal, there's lots of other ways you can do it. You can use your regular Windows command prompt or Mac terminal, or if you've already installed Git, which you have, you can use Git Bash. So you can try through here. If you open up Git Bash, yeah, I like it right through. Yeah, it's all the same, whatever you prefer. Now, if you're using Git Bash, you're going to have to browse into your PHP Tunes. So you're going to need to run the command cd c XAMPP htdocs PHP Tunes. So you'll have to browse into that folder. You can also use Windows PowerShell. Oh, got it. I don't use Git Bash very much. Thanks, Tom. So, okay, so it'd be C. Always good to learn stuff from my students. So you could initialize it here. So if you want to use Git Bash or the command line or PowerShell, doesn't matter. You can run the Git commands from any of these. So run git init, and then every time we want to upload changes, we're going to do git space add space dot. So this means include all the files, any file name, any extension. And there is a space. It's git space add space dot. So run that command. And now we want to make a new commit. We want to take a snapshot, a time-stamped version of our project at this exact moment. So that version is a commit. So we're going to run git commit -m for message. And I'll put in lesson 4 2. validation complete. So I'm putting in a descriptive message of what did we change. We completed the input validation. Now the next step you'll need to do, I've already done, and that is we're going to connect our remote repository to the local folder, which is going to be git remote add origin. And then you're going to put your Git URL after. So git commit -m. And then git remote add origin. And then it's our repository URL. How do you get the URL of your repository? Simple. You can copy it either from the address bar or right from here. There's a copy button. Yep, exactly, Mike. So no brackets. The brackets were just a placeholder. So just like this, just a regular URL. You just substitute in your GitHub username. But you can just copy it straight from your browser or from the setup page. Just click copy. Now you only have to do this once per project that connects your local repository to the GitHub repository. So now they're linked together. Yeah, it doesn't give you any notification when you connect the remote. Tyler, if you get a notification, that's bad because that means it failed. So no notification, no news is good news. And then our last step is we want to do a Git push. That's going to sync, it's going to upload our current snapshot to GitHub. So if I do Git push -u for unconditional from the origin, from our local repository, you can upload to the master branch or the main branch. GitHub has changed this a bit, but master is still the default name. When you create a repository, you automatically get a branch called master. So I'm going to run that. I'll put it in the chat as well. Git push -u origin master. It says my branch has been set to track. And when I'm done, if I go and refresh, so now it shows my PHP tunes was just updated. Now you'll have one commit, but I have 9 because I've already been, so here's my commit with my completed validation. So I made 2 commits today. This was the version of our code up to our break at 1 o'clock. And then this was my second version. So my commit history, my messages, it tells the history of how I put the site together and what changes I've made over time. And I'll continue updating this repository every lesson. So if you refresh your repository, your code, now your project should be here. I'm going to make one more change to the project on my own machine, and then I'm going to make a new add, commit, and push to upload that change. Whenever we make a Git repository, we should also create a Readme file that serves as documentation for the project, that explains what the project is. It might include commands as to how to use it or install it or configure it. Now GitHub has a link here which I don't want to use. I don't want to create files on the GitHub website because that's going to put our two versions out of sync. So that's never a good idea. Yeah. That's right, Dominic. I guess that's one value of using the CDN, like I think Akeem recommended last week. It won't list the project as JavaScript. Okay, Julio, did you get an error? If you got an error, you can fix it and run the command again. So just fix the typo and run the git remote add origin again. So I'm going to create a README file in my code editor, and then I'm going to add, commit, and push. And that README file will show up at the bottom here. Yeah, so just run it. Oh, I see. Okay, so you need to remove the origin. I have to double check. It's git remote remove. Here, I think you just run this, Julio. Git remote remove origin, and then do the git remote add origin again. That should fix it. Of course. So I'm just going to create a simple README file, go back to my file explorer. I'm going to make a new file. It has to have a specific name, which should be README in all caps, and then .md in lowercase. This is the standard name for a GitHub documentation file. MD stands for Markdown, so it supports both HTML and plain text. So I'm just going to put on a little description. And I'm just going to put in a link to my live site. In a new window. So there's my README file. I might update it through the semester as we add some more features. So now I have this README file on my computer. Yes. Yep, that's fine. And you will need to do a README file in your assignment. So now I want this file to be included in my repository on GitHub. So I'm going to run the add, commit, and push commands again. I don't need the init command. I only have to do that once. And I don't need the add remote command. Again, those two are only one time. And I'm going to run git add dot. It will track my new file. And in fact, notice Visual Studio Code marks it as added now. It turned green. It shows it's added. I'll say git commit -m, lesson 4, part 3, create README. And now this time I can just say git push, and it'll just upload. I can shorten that push command. So it's uploaded my README file. And if I go back and refresh, this little blue section is going to go away, and the contents of my README file will be displayed here. So now my documentation is here, and it even includes a link to my site. Not sure why the just update that again and commit it again. Add or update AWS link in README. So add, commit, push, add, commit, push. That's our workflow for tracking changes and uploading them to GitHub. Not sure why it's not opening a new window. I won't worry about it too much. So now I've got 11 commits, 11 versions of my project. So for your assignment, you'll make a new repository. You'll make at least 2 commits, and you'll include a README file in your assignment. I've also got a couple of references here that I will show you. So the slide deck for you to reference is here. I've also got a couple of other items here on Git for you that I'll show you on D2L. I've created a little tutorial site on how to use Git from the beginning, what the commands mean and how to use them. There's also a couple of good tutorials that are a few hours long on LinkedIn Learning, if you're interested. So those resources are here. As well, under weekly learning and tools and resources, I've put the Git commands here as well as a quick reference. Init, add, push with the link to their tutorial. So you can always refer to these commands or these resources if you need them. So for next Sunday, make sure you've added your validation to your form and save pages. Make sure you've got your PHP tunes up on GitHub. Oh, I should also just show, we'll also just need to quickly show you how to invite me in case Jared hasn't shown you that already. And there is a quiz in the lesson 5 folder that'll be available at 3 o'clock today. So how do you give me access? In your repository, there's a settings button right here, the end of the subnav. If you click settings, and go to under access, there's collaborators. So if you click it, GitHub will ask you to confirm your password. And then under add people, you'll just type my GitHub username, which I've put in the assignment document. It's IFOTN. It doesn't come up because I'm already logged in with that account, but let's say I wanted to invite, Jarrett to my project. I type his GitHub username and I invite him. And if I click add, GitHub will email Jarrett a link with an invite to my project. So you're going to submit all your assignments for me this way, in this class as well as next semester, even your exams. You're going to post the code on GitHub and invite me. You still have to post the link on D2L, however, because I don't necessarily know whose GitHub project belongs to which student, because many of you have, GitHub usernames that don't identify who you actually are. So even though you invite me, you must include the link when you submit assignment 1 on D2L, or I can't mark it. If I can't see the code, I can't give you a grade. So be sure to submit both the GitHub link and your AWS link on D2L. Okay, you have 2 weeks to do the assignment. It's 3 pages. So that's lots of time.